Let me start off by saying hello and welcome everyone to today's staff roundtable discussion. My name is Deborah Sosower. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Arrowmont, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. We're going to start the discussion with introductions, and then we're going to launch right into a conversation about craft collections and exhibitions at Arrowmont. If you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a chat bar, and I will add links and bios for all of my colleagues here today. And if you look at the bottom toward the center of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A tab. And if you'll use the Q&A tab to send questions, we'll get to as many as we can today in the hour's discussion. I'm very pleased to welcome my colleagues, Kelsey Dillow, who is the gallery manager and a photographer, Bill Griffith, who is the outreach and partnerships liaison and a potter, and Gracie Herbert, who is the supply store manager and a ceramic and fibers and mixed media artist. Kelsey, you might imagine, works a lot with collections here, managing all of Arrowmont's gallery spaces as well as the permanent collection. Bill is working on a special teaching collection for the school, and Gracie both shows and sells artwork and art supplies through the gallery, or through the showcase gallery and the supply store. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone in the community for joining us. And I'm going to start by handing it over to Kelsey so you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Cool. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I'm the gallery manager here at Arrowmont. I coordinate our exhibitions in our 5 gallery spaces, and I manage our permanent collection here on campus, which houses about 1,000 objects, give or take. And that's historical and contemporary objects. I'm from West Virginia, and I've lived in Appalachia for all of my 27 years. I got my BFA at Ohio University, where I studied photography, women, gender, and sexuality studies, and museum studies. Much of my work is created through the lens of film cameras. I was trained in silver gelatin printing, which is my bread and butter in my studio practice. But I always keep color film in my bag as my everyday carry. I've also been exploring alternative processes in photography, mostly gum bichromate, which is a notoriously tricky process, but I've really enjoyed experimenting with materials like blood, herbs, ash, instead of traditional watercolor pigments that are used in my prints. I'm specifically interested in Appalachian histories, and I explore a lot of that in my work and my research, specifically religion, folk tales, and granny magic traditions in the mountains. I've also been able to dip my toe a little bit into some traditional craft practices since coming to Arrowmont, so some of that peeps up in my work as well. But yeah.
Thanks, Kelsey. Bill, will you tell us more about yourself?
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. So my name is Bill Griffith, and I've worked at Arrowmont for 32 years. I hope no one gasped on that. Did I hear a gasp on that one? But I was hired as the assistant director in 1988. Part of my job for those first 6 years as the assistant director was installation of all the exhibitions at Arrowmont. At that time, there were probably about 5 or 6 a year, 2 nationals, of course, the instructor exhibition, a few regional and a local Sevier County Jury Biennial. But I did that for 6 years, and I have to tell you that was a real failing forward and a learning curve. But then we hired our first gallery manager in 1995, and since then there's been 6 during my tenure here at Arrowmont. So in 2000, I became the program director. We had kind of a additional staff hired, and new titles were given in 2000. And I had that position until 2016. And then in 2016, I thought I was ready to retire, and I was offered a job to go part-time. And that's my current position, called Outreach and Partnership Liaison. And I work a lot with development, marketing, and outreach, university outreach. As far as my own artwork, I blame and credit Arrowmont for my addiction to clay and wood firing. And but a lot of people don't know I was a student for 17 weeks at Arrowmont prior to being hired as the assistant director. 3 weeks I actually paid for, and 14 weeks I was a studio assistant. And hopefully some of you listening were or are studio assistants and understand what's involved with that. So, so when I was the program director, I was hiring many, many artists. So that's how I kind of started to collect, I guess. That's how we'll move into the collection. So what a great opportunity to be surrounded by such amazing artists in all disciplines. So, but I will talk more about my pottery addiction and collection. So the last thing I want to talk about is my relationship to Arrowmont with collections. So over the last 32 years, I've collected and amassed probably about 175 pieces of clay, primarily pottery, the majority. And I'm working with Kelsey now to gift that collection, but we're going to curate it and organize it and document it. And we want it to be a teaching collection. We want it to be where students and instructors can actually handle it, touch it, use it in some format under the observation and direction of the gallery manager. So that's what I'm doing, hopefully before I retire in a year, is to gift my pottery collection to Arrowmont as a teaching collection.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for that gift. Gracie.
Well, I don't want to dust it, and I don't know what to do with it, so Arrowmont it'll really serve a good purpose.
Well, and when we get more into the discussion, I have some photos that you shared so people can see some more of that collection. But first, Gracie, will you introduce yourself and tell us more about your work and your work here at Arrowmont?
Of course, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Gracie. If you follow me on Instagram, you might know me as Gracie Love. That's usually what I sell under. And so I created that persona because my name is Grace Love Herbert, and it just kind of embodies my personality and who I am. But I received my BFA in studio arts with a concentration in ceramics from Miami University in Ohio in 2013. And then after that, I pursued my own practice as a studio potter. I was making small batch items and trying to find my voice in what I was making. I, in that time, moved to Florida, and so a lot of my work started to embody these like super bright colors and lots of patterns, because I was seeing the world through that Florida light, which is bright and colorful, and that's something that's stuck with me today. While I was pursuing my work, I was also earning income from a variety of jobs. So I worked as a resident in a retail gallery. I worked in a commercial clay warehouse. I've waited tables and stocked grocery shelves and kind of anything to help out. You know, if you want to make art, you'll find a way to make it happen. And then in 2016, I was really lucky and received an 11-week work study position in the supply store. And so that was my first experience at Arrowmont and in a craft school. And in the work study program, you get classes along with imbalance of what your work is. And so I chose classes all outside of pottery because I wanted to learn everything and anything. And that kind of segued into my practice of making more than just pots. As Deborah said, I also do textiles, I make jewelry, and I do a lot of other things. And so it's really great that I have that background and knowledge, because part of my job as store manager is I also stock all of the supplies in the store, but I work very closely with instructors on what we'll provide for students or what students need to bring. A lot of times there are strange materials that I don't know, and I love those conversations of figuring that out. And then a big part of my job is being in charge of the retail gallery, which is the showcase gallery. There's about 60 different artists represented. They all have a strong affiliation to Arrowmont. That's one of my favorite things that I get to oversee, because I get to talk to people about what makes Arrowmont great. And as Bill said, we're surrounded by so many great artists. It makes my job really easy. And so, yeah, I mean, I look forward to getting to talk about that more. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Well, I want to launch the conversation immediately by saying each of you guys have expressed yourself as artists, and you've touched on the way that impacts your work at Arrowmont. But can you guys speak more broadly or more specifically about how being an artist yourself, having that identity and having that creative outlet influences or impacts the way that you approach your day when you arrive at Arrowmont each day?
I guess I can start. So I think that being an artist is a huge advantage when it comes to managing galleries and collections and handling artwork in general. And that's something that I try to relay to our artists in residence when they're here with us. Our residents usually help me as my gallery staff while they're here for their year. But as an artist, I mean, you imagine seeing your work installed in a very specific way with specific considerations and care. And I think that's a skill that translates really well into a gallery space, being able to apply those concerns and considerations to the work of other folks. And on a personal level, I talk a lot to my work in the studio and my plants, but I talk a lot to the work in the gallery space, and some folks might think I'm a little weird for doing that, but I personify a lot of the objects, and I think it helps you treat them with the respect and care that they need and deserve. Plus, it's just fun.
So part of my background being a multimedia artist is really beneficial to the fact that the showcase is not just selling pots. We try to stock it with so much more, and then also understanding the work that goes into a lot of these items. So having taken jewelry classes or even the fiber classes really helps me, as Kelsey has mentioned, know how to handle the artwork. I'm really confident in shipping because I've spent a lot of time shipping pots. And so that benefits me because we do have an online store which we sell items in. And so knowing that I can securely package items or a large vase that I'm sending somewhere, but being able to have the knowledge and the skill set in a variety of mediums helps me better sell and present the artists that we have. And so that crosses over into both my art and then the store. I think a big thing I have to remember is because it's a retail gallery, not choosing just for me, right? Like, because we're selling to everyone. So when I first got here, a big thing I did was make a customer profile and figure out what sells well, what our customer persona is, what they're looking for, their price range. And I really try to help the artist know that too, so that they can better send work to us to sell.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting. What is that?
Yeah.
What is, or go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, being a working artist at Arrowmont, it's hard to maintain a studio practice when we're in full session. But it's really given me an amazing opportunities in the way of collecting a lot of artwork in all media, from instructors that I had hired before, or resident artists. There's been 140 some resident artists and really developing relationships. I look at Arrowmont as an opportunity to really, for a lot of us, to have meaningful dialogue with artists that enrich our lives, but also I think artists that come to teach really enjoy knowing that the majority of Arrowmont staff are working artists. It kind of validates why we all are here in that respect. On a personal note, because of my longevity here and being a working artist and an arts administrator, I also call myself an educator because I do a lot of teaching. In fact, I always think I'm more of an educator than an artist, but that's just me saying that. But a lot of opportunities have come my way to curate or jury national exhibitions, and I attribute that to being at Arrowmont, obviously, networking, connections, but also Arrowmont's strong reputation as a craft school and the quality of art and artists that come through here.
So Paul had asked a little earlier, that you kind of touched on this yourself, Bill, but Paul Rosenblatt is a collector, and he's always interested in what drives other people to collect, like what inspires you. So we are, as you've said, surrounded by amazing art, amazing artists throughout the year, and that's part of what your jobs entail. But what drives you? And maybe Kelsey, you do some collecting for the permanent collection. Gracie, I don't know what the process is yet for you when you're collecting art or stocking the showcase gallery. And Bill, you've had experience in this too. What drives you personally with your collections, and is that different from, or how is that different from what drives you in episode?
I'll start. Thank you, Paul, for that question. I never really thought of myself as a collector until I woke up one day and found all this artwork in my house. But I did write an article, or Ceramics Monthly wanted to do an article on my collection because the editor had been to my home. It was kind of intimidating because I never really think of myself as a collector. So I titled that article Collecting Stories, because every piece of artwork I own is connected to a person that I actually have had a relationship, meaningful conversations, or long-term friendship with. And except for some of the collected pieces from my travels in Asia and South America, but a lot of those I actually was fortunate to meet the artists. So my quick answer is I really collect because of the people who are connected to the art pieces, because it gives me such great memories when I look at the artwork. It's not just a piece of artwork, but it resonates the friendships and the stories behind the artwork.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think personally for me too, when you find yourself managing gallery spaces for almost 9 years now, I woke up one day and was like, oh my God, look at all this art in our house. Wow, how wonderful is that? And I think that I tend to gravitate towards things that I have a personal relationship with the maker. And I think that's how Arrowmont's collection has functioned and continues to function. And Bill knows this. Sometimes me and Bill will walk through, especially the ceramics part of the collection, and I just want to follow him around with a microphone, because he will point to a piece and tell you everything about that person, what class they taught, when we purchased that piece or when we got that piece, what they're doing now. Like, he can tell you all of those things. And I think that a lot of Arrowmont's collection functions that way. I mean, it's almost like a photo album. Who made this thing? When were they here? What were they teaching? What is their relationship to Arrowmont? Like, it's all of those things.
I don't have kids or grandkids, so I look at my pots as photos of people that I love and who've been important to my life. I know that sounds a little weird, but I was reflecting on that like a couple years ago with some clay friends, and so it has a similar resonation, I guess, when you look at the pots. And I'm surprised I remember all that stuff, Kelsey, because a lot of times I don't remember where I parked my car at Arrowmont, so I don't know how I remember those things.
That memory driven is definitely important. And so in my own life, I don't necessarily collect a lot of art. I collect a lot of interesting rocks and pebbles and lake glass and have jars everywhere. And part of those collections are the memories and the activity of being in the moment and being on the beach and finding those things. As curating the showcase gallery, to talk about that a little bit, again, I've really kind of tried to put myself in the feet of the customers. And so, as Bill said, the stories or the memories, it's really important that, students come here and they want to take something home. And so we do the Arrowmont logo mug every year, and that's a really great souvenir. People love it. Thank you, Kelsey. That's 6 years. Austin Riddle did them for us. And so that's a really great legacy that we have at Arrowmont. But then in general, people come and they want to get something for someone else. We sell a lot of jewelry in that manner. Someone asked what type of customers visit the gallery shop. And for the most part, so that like persona that I've envisioned our customers are, they're usually traveling. People come from all over the place to come to Gatlinburg or to take workshops. So they might have a suitcase, they might have a small bag, something they can confidently and securely throw into that luggage is really important. And then like the sweet spot price range is about $40 to $60. That's something people don't think too much about. They'll spend it and they'll think they have a great memory or moment that they have. And again, size of the item. We don't sell a lot of large pieces because it's going in a suitcase or in a car. And so, yeah, I mean, that's our customer profile, but it's all based on that memory and that Arrowmont experience.
So I'm curious to know if there's anything that you've come across in your work with collections. So Bill, it's been as you've been mining your personal collection for this teaching one, or Kelsey, as you've discovered things in the permanent collection, or when things come in, like the Sevier County jury biennials coming up. What surprised you? Or when people ask you this question, like, oh, what's it like to work at Arrowmont or work in the galleries? Like, what is something that has surprised you that was unexpected in the job?
Well, I think what surprises me most working at Arrowmont and working in collections is how willing people are and how much they want to give you things for your collection. It seems like every time I turn around, someone has brought something that they found in their great-grandmother's attic, and it's, maybe maybe they bought it at Aerocraft when, back when we were a settlement school. Like, it's crazy to me, like how generous people are in the things that they want to give us. So that surprises me every day.
Well, keep the surprise. I'll have to go reflect back when we talk about collections. When I was working in the gallery for those 6 years, the things that surprised me was how long it takes to literally set up a show. It's when you unbox 100 pieces and they're laying all on a few tables, it doesn't look like much. And I just remember how it would take 5 10-hour days at least to give those objects, to bring those objects to life in a gallery setting, and the challenges of having them relate to one another rather than just line them up. And another thing that surprised me, and again, I'm going back to when I was working in the gallery because this topic is called collections. I hope I'm on target here. But I was always amazed how people who made beautiful artwork would send it without any instructions or ways to hang it or display it. And that was a surprise. And then maintenance and I would say, whoa, how can we make something? So that was kind of a surprise that somebody would spend all that time making such a beautiful piece, but there was a lack of finishing the sending it off and without any thoughtful ways that they wanted it to be presented, I guess. And the last thing that surprised me is how the artwork really comes alive when you do lighting. Lighting was like the icing on the cake. And after working, installing a show, you get kind of used to it. You look at it as problem solving rather than appreciation of artwork. That's me speaking, no one else. And then when you all of a sudden adjust the lights and hang the vinyl, and it's just a great surprise feeling of, wow, this really came to life. So that was a couple surprises when I was installing.
That that packaging your materials and knowing how to display artwork. Kelsey and I have talked to residents about how important that is. And we both install things very differently. You know, she's putting it in an exhibition space, which is very different than a retail gallery where people are picking things up and handling them.
Oh my gosh, Gracie, I don't think I could do your job. Every time someone, I can't. Don't touch it. Please don't touch it.
And I'm like, you can touch in here. I tell people all the time because they'll look at things and hover and you know, but yeah, it is so important as an artist to think about that finished thing. And it makes your gallery people so happy when they can install it right on a wall with a very clear cut install or anything.
I also want to add just one real quick thing that Bill, what you said reminded me of. One more thing that is so funny to me that surprises me a lot is that sometimes I have pulled the most gorgeous work out of a box that had been shipped to me, packaged in someone's dirty laundry. So like sometimes what people will use as packing material, it keeps it safe, but it's always like, every time I open that box, I'm like, what's it going to be today?
Cool.
You never thought you would long for peanuts, I guess.
I know, right?
Guys, Thomas has a question about how artists and educators can get more involved with Arrowmont. Can any of you guys speak to that, and possibly as it relates to galleries or to the store or exhibitions, or even what the teaching collection might look like?
So I can start. So in terms of getting involved as an artist with the Showcase Gallery, unfortunately, I have very limited space and I try to maximize it as much as possible. With that being said, I try to bring in a couple of new artists every year just to kind of freshen things up. And, you know, some artists kind of move on and grow out of our space, and that happens. It's important to find a retail gallery that your work connects to, but it also connects to the buyers there. Not every retail gallery is right for every artist and vice versa. And so by trying to bring in a couple new artists every year, there's a couple that kind of just, we part ways on good terms and whatnot. But so typically I prefer this, and I created an application that if people are interested, that I can send them the application. It asks for their name. A big part of the Showcase Gallery is affiliation to Arrowmont. And so the Showcase Gallery started as the AIR Showcase, and it was a place for residents to sell work and past residents to sell work. And I think like 2016, Kelly Sullivan, the former store manager, opened up the Showcase to include artists with a strong connection. So that included work studies, employees, instructors, a variety of people. Sometimes if someone's like, I've been a student once, I usually kind of encourage them to become a little bit stronger connected to Arrowmont just because we have such a large pool of people. But yeah, so in that application, it asks for their medium, it asks for pictures. And a lot of times when I'm sourcing work in general, I look at art all the time. I'm always on Instagram looking at things, trying to see what's in, you know, who's emerging, because that's how I think of the Showcase as a great way for emerging artists or people trying to find their ground. And so trying to see what's new and upcoming. And yeah, but I mean, I'm always happy to talk art with people, even if they're not looking to be in the Showcase necessarily, but they're looking for advice on pricing or what could be better or any of that. I do it a lot with work studies, and I mean, even in conversations with staff, with each other.
Thomas, if you're an educator, I can speak a little bit about how you can get involved with Arrowmont from a programmatic perspective. First of all, Arrowmont's very generous, and any educator receives a 50% tuition discount once a year. And another avenue would be the Educational Assistantship Program. I actually came out of that program as a studio assistant. I was a high school ceramics teacher before I found out about Arrowmont, and so I was fortunate to be a studio assistant twice. And then Kelsey can talk about the call for entries. I'll let Kelsey talk about that, because that's a way you could get involved with exhibitions through a jury process?
Yeah, so, I think that, every now and then I'll get emails from folks like kind of shopping their exhibitions around. And I think it's a lot like Gracie mentioned. I think the best place to get in terms of Arrowmont's gallery spaces is to keep an eye out for when we have calls for entry. Every other year we'll do a national or sometimes international call for entry. And those can sometimes be thematic. And then also, for folks that live or work in Sevier County, we do our Sevier County biennial every other year as well. Sometimes we'll throw a call for proposals out there too. It's a slide room application process. So we have 3 small exhibition spaces that are really good for solo 2-person or, even 3-4-person shows. And so, every now and then we'll throw a call out there where people can just propose exhibitions that they'd like to put on here. And me and a few other folks on staff, our exhibitions committee, get together and we curate from those. And sometimes we might even reach far back and invite someone from those application pools. So it's really important to keep an eye out when we have calls for entry, because I think that's a really way to get started. It exposes us and our community to your work. It exposes Gracie to your work, so she could see if that could be something she wants to put in the supply store gallery. It exposes our programmatic staff to see if that's a class they might want to teach here. So it's all very cyclical. It all very much feeds into each other. And we had a 35 under 35 exhibition, last year before. And where, we really wanted to see artwork made from emerging artists. And so those were a lot of new folks that didn't have affiliations with Arrowmont. And so that was really important to us, is to get more and more folks in our community.
So the symbiotic relationship between the artist and the collector, so important, right? You mentioned it. You definitely cannot have art without people buying that art. And again, a lot of that, especially in the realm of Arrowmont, I think has to deal with those memories and those connections. Different pieces talk to different people. And so especially as if we're going to go specifically talking about pottery, for example, some people might love wood-fired pots and some people might love brightly surfaced pots, and so having a variety in the showcase gallery allows for kind of people to find what speaks to them. I think a lot of it is based on personal aesthetics, and there's people that make out there and they might not be making for anyone specific, but even if I make a bad piece as an artist, I know that someone might like it even if I don't. So everyone has their own taste, and it's important that even if you're making art, you're just making it to make it, because someone will appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead. I couldn't read the question from Ann Hruska, but I do know Ann Hruska. She was the Arrowmont board chair for several years, and a friend and collector. And I know that she's collected extensively, especially wood turning maybe. So it's nice to hear from you, Ann. But purchasing artwork or trading artwork from people you respect or you've had a long time friendship with is so important to me. I've never just collected just because I was thinking of its monetary value for future. I could care less about that. So it was always about the person, connection to the person.
So we do have, we have had some instances where we have shown our collection at other institutions or other gallery spaces. We've partnered with other institutions or gallery spaces to show staff work, to show permanent collection work, to show resident work. We do partner with folks as they line up with our mission and as those opportunities present themselves. Yeah. as the collection gets older or as the collector gets older? Because those are two different questions. But as you know, as a collection ages, the collection itself, things that keep me up at night are climate control situations and how these objects are stored, right? And then, if you're a collector yourself, and I think Bill can maybe speak to that too, like how you make plans for how your collection lives on.
I've actually had a few phone calls with people who collect mostly pottery, and there was an article in Ceramics Monthly, not about my collection. This was something a year ago, and I actually called the collector and asked him, because as you get older, you kind of wonder where do these things go? Where do they end up? And sure, you could sell them through a secondary market or eBay, but that was never my intention. And so in having conversations with Kelsey and the administration here at Arrowmont, they were interested in accepting my donation to create a teaching collection, a pottery teaching collection that would really could be used by people and handled. That's my goal, is that it doesn't sit behind plexi, but it kind of lives within the next generation, and that it'll become. I'm finding that several of the pieces of pottery I own now, the potters are either deceased or they're starting not to make work now. So the value of it, financial, monetary, is increasing, but that's more important to me. It really traces a period of time of aesthetic development in pottery, and hopefully that can be important to Arrowmont as they continue to teach ceramic classes.
And collections are tough in that way, right? Where it's like you want these objects to live the lives that they were created to live, while at the same time, protecting them and keeping them safe so that they live long lives. That's something that I struggle with all of the time, trying to figure out how to keep a collection safe, but to make sure that people have access to it. And it's tough. It's a tough tightrope walk for sure.
And so in the retail side, I could speak of, and real quickly before I do that, Kelsey did a really great job with the instructor exhibit, pushing that online so that it was out there and for people to see. But we do have an online store. If you go to the Arrowmont website and you hit that store page, you can shop artwork online. I work alongside one of our associates, Vicki Bradshaw, who is great in taking pictures for me so that I can just type the copy and she edits the pictures. She's good at that. We use our skill sets of what we're strong with, and we're able to post about 5 images from most artists in the showcase if they've released us to offer their artwork online. And then in coordination with that, Deborah and I work together marketing-wise to make sure that we boost Facebook posts and all of that. And then the supply store does have its own Instagram. I don't really post about supplies on it. I post mostly about artwork and Arrowmont apparel. And so that's something I have seen a little bit more traffic on the online website. And a lot of times it is in relation to like what I posted. So recently I posted it. We have hoodies in right now and it's getting cold, and we had a couple orders come in that were associated with that.
An incredible question. Thank you for asking. So, like a lot of other places that are dealing with having to look at this right now, a lot of our collection is made by white folks. So it is a huge goal of mine to be able to fill holes in our collection. So it's very important to me that, one, we are paying artists for the objects that we take into our collection. So, I brought up it was Bridging the Gap. They're like a 35 under 35 exhibition that we did a few years back. and we offer, instead of doing, cash prizes, we were doing permanent collection purchase awards. So we are paying artists for their work to be brought into the collection. So we're actively trying to find where our holes are in our representation, whether that be people of different backgrounds and ethnicities, whether that be people of different mediums, right? Like, it spans a lot of different topics and grounds. And I think that that's something that I'm really committed to. And I know that other folks in our collection and exhibitions committee are also very committed to, because those holes need to be filled. And we want to make sure that our collection of craft and art objects represent the people that make them.
Well, my personal collection represents people of color. A lot of my travels through Central, South America, Asia, I've collected. So, but as Kelsey said, yeah, we're very sensitive to increasing that representation, diversity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of things, right? But my favorite moment is when a young artist comes to me and they're not sure about their work, and they approach me and they want to sell in the showcase, or they want to talk about how to sell their artwork and how to find galleries, and cultivating that relationship. And if we do take on their artwork in the showcase, and then being able to communicate with them and let them know that they've sold pieces, and that getting to interact with them and see them grow as an artist, but then that validation that they're making something that someone wants is so important for someone as an artist. And especially like that emerging art where you're not sure what you're making or who you're making it for. And, just to see that person's genuine excitement over what they're doing.
Yeah. Bill?
Well, boy, several things bring me joy working at Arrowmont. First thing, Taco Tuesday ranks pretty high, and
all that guac.
Patsy's peanut butter cookies would be a second. I've been so fortunate to meet so many people, but what really brings me joy, and it never ceases to amaze me, is how, and I'm speaking from the workshop perspective, is watching 100 students come to campus, many of them not knowing each other, then watching the individual workshops, the dynamics that happen with one instructor and 12 to 14 students is pretty powerful. The bonding that happens in a week, Sunday, no one knows anyone. They're doing that really awkward introducing themselves. Half of them are scared to death because we're all insecure about our art, about our making art. And then by Friday, everyone has trusted one another, and people leave. Lifelong friendships are made here, and it's pretty powerful and magical in a lot of ways. And out of all my years of being here, that really continues to amaze me and bring me such joy. And then having people come back year after year is another great moment, is to know that people have waited all year to come to Arrowmont. And it makes us work harder, I think, knowing that people have waited all year to come to Arrowmont, and there's a big responsibility for us to make it magical for them.
Gracie, what do you think? Oh, wait, you already answered, didn't you?
You're
did,
up.
but those connections are so important. And especially being in the store, like I see just about everyone come in, because if you've been to Arrowmont, you pay fees in the store. That's everyone's favorite day. And I collect their money. But it's the stories I hear, and year after year, people who have made friendships, and they come every year together, even though they live states apart. Like that's the beautiful thing about Arrowmont, is that connecting factor.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I think what Bill said, when you see someone that comes every year, right? Like that makes me so happy. Like I seeing familiar faces. And Bill, I think it's an extended version of what you mentioned about people being so bashful on Sundays and then being family by Saturday. Like that extends beyond that week. Like, you know, people come back once you come here once. Like, we don't say goodbye on this campus because everyone always comes back.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to agree. I think that the people and the stories and the creation that happens here is really magical. And then just like as a gallery person, unboxing artwork is my favorite thing to do. It's like Christmas over and over and over again. I love taking artwork out of packages. It's so exciting to see things in person. And then, of course, I love the submission process of our exhibitions too. I love seeing all of those proposals come in. That's really exciting.
Sometimes just the packaging of it itself is so beautiful too. I don't know if you have that moment, but you know, someone who ships mugs in like a really fantastic way, and you know, like you mentioned, you see all sorts of art shipped in all different ways, and a beautiful packed piece of artwork sent to you it's a great moment. Sometimes I want to Instagram this and show everyone because it's beautiful.
Yeah, like a well-designed crate I dream of those.
Well, I would say don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And that's, I mean, I know that that's a very simple thing to say, but it's very important. And again, it goes back to, even if you're making art that you're not sure about, submitting to things or reaching out to galleries and inquiring, or even just talking to friends or other people. You know, if you don't know if it's something you'll continue on or if it's working unless you get other people to talk about it.
I would advise, this is from my own experience collecting, I would say if you respond to a piece of artwork so strongly and so it's so powerful, I would encourage you to purchase it if you have the means. Even if you don't have the means, use a credit card and eat ramen for a couple months. But you know, and it's a personal experience I had, but I was visiting a young artist cooperative, and there was a piece that I saw, and I never had this powerful respond to it. And so I talked to the artist about it, and my friend said, "Come on, Bill, we got to go." And we were walking back to the car, and I just turned around and walked back and got my checkbook out and I told that artist that piece was such a powerful, I had such a powerful response to it. It was a sculptural piece, kind of a vessel. And I have it in my house in a prominent spot. And whenever people come, and I've lived there for 14 years, people always point to that piece and say, "Wow, who made that?" And then I have the story. Now I have the double story that I know the artist, and that artist has taught here 2 or 3 times since then. At the time, she was a resident artist at another craft school. So that would be, and I know not everyone is in a financial situation, but if something speaks to you and you know it's going to be a stretch, I would buy it, because then you'll never regret it the rest of your life. That's one thing. And then I'll repeat what I was said before. You know, people that you admire as artists and just the way they live their lives. And I collect those types of artwork of people that I know, and because it's always going to be that story connected to that piece. So I'm kind of repeating from that last question, but so that would be my advice to people who, buy what you like, what you love. Don't necessarily buy something because someone thinks it's valuable or great, because you got to live with it every day. So
you got to dust it.
Yeah, who dust? That's that's why I have students. One thing that a lot of the instructors, when the kilns are cooling, the ones that I know will say, "Bill, can I bring my class out to your house to see your collection?" And I'll say, "Sure." And then we make it educational. We let students touch things, and that's how they get dusted. But I always let them touch things and photograph things. And a couple times, a couple young BFA students said, "Could I drink out of this Michael Simon tumbler?" And it was just amazing that they would, they were so revered, and they were educated. They knew who the artist was. And so I said, sure, let's make tea out of the teapot and see how it pours. So that's what got me thinking about a teaching collection versus a collection that's just always going to be behind glass. So yeah, buy it if you love it. Support your local artist.
Yeah, and I would also say too, the way that I collect some of the work that I personally have, I trade a lot. I trade with folks. If I've got prints that they like and they've got something that I like and we want to trade, don't be afraid to ask people if they'll trade with you, because chances are they will, because that gives them a chance to collect your work as well. So in terms of collections, like, that's the advice that I have. And then when it comes to exhibitions, I think most artists out there have installed their own work at some point, and that is absolutely where gallery management starts. So help your fellow artists install their work. If you're a printmaker, ask a ceramicist how they pack their work. If you're a jeweler, ask a weaver how they store their work. When you understand the logistics of what it means to be a maker in a variety of mediums, you get a bigger picture for how all of that work in collections and exhibitions happens. So ask questions. Like, there's nothing better than being a beginner at everything.
I always enjoy talking with Kelsey because, like I said, the way that we have to display art is so different, and getting to pick her brain and talk about things and understanding the exhibition side is so different than when I curate things. I kind of put them together as if they're in your home, and usually based off color and whatnot. And again, to encourage people to pick up, but getting to have those conversations about, oh, that's how that would be in like a larger space, or how it maybe might be displayed better. Having that interaction with staff and of different types of knowledge is so beneficial to my job.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Oh yeah, there's my collection, and people eating off my collection, and from Arrowmont. Thanks, Deb. Hey, Kelsey, we got a minute left. I'm learning a lot from Kelsey because to document this collection of mine, Kelsey has a great software. It's a new software. But I wanted to ask Kelsey to talk about that new software program that you're making me use, and I'll love it. I know I will, but
so yeah, we've had an old school process for collections management for a long time. So we've been in the process of transitioning to a thing called Collector Systems, which is really incredible. So it's cloud-based, and you can access it anywhere, even on your phone if you have the login. But provenance is really important when it comes to managing a collection the size that we have. So, that means knowing who made it, knowing when it was made, knowing what it's made of, knowing the history of the artist. Where did they live? Where do they work? Are they deceased? Where are they from? So pretty much anything you can build up about an object that helps better tell its story is ideal, which is why I'm so excited to work with Bill and his collection, because he knows all of those things. He knows the history and the story behind the object, who made it, and what the relationship to him is. And so it's really important to be able to understand the context of objects when you have all of that history in your head. So it's about putting that history into a system that, is searchable and all that fun stuff. And to be able to interpret those pieces in a gallery setting, how you use that information, not just for research purposes, but for exhibition purposes and education. But yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey guys.
Oh, poor Deb.
Thanks for tuning in.